This is the Marvel Masterworks vidcast, true believers, where we cover all of the events in the Marvel Universe, from the wanderings of the Green Goliath, to the chaotic offices of the Daily Bugle, to the grim alleyways of Hell's Kitchen, to the top of Avengers Tower, with your hosts, Adam and the Emerald Enthusiast.
Welcome to another episode of the Marvel Masterworks vidcast and podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, Donnie, the Emerald Enthusiast, or the Venom Enthusiast, or the Hawkeye Enthusiast. What do we call it? I feel like we got to change it for every character we're talking about.
Yeah, let's not confuse people, though. So, what's up, Marvel fans? It's the man whose ring runs on fanboy energy, the podcasting machine, the big nerd in green. It's the Emerald Enthusiast. We hope you will watch this vidcast like a hawk and keep an eye out for the dad jokes.
Which already started. He's in fine form already. The holiday break didn't dilute or diminish any of your dad joke capability.
That's right. I recharged the dad joke ring.
And I'm sure you had a lot of practice with your girls' home and
yes,
all that jazz. So there you go. Yeah. Did you have a chance to do any Martha? This guy,
Actually, I have had a couple of chances recently, and as we get deeper into this podcast, you just might hear a reference to that in Hawkeye. So,
all right, okay,
cool. Stay tuned.
Cool. Very good, very good. As Donnie has so eloquently alluded to, we are, of course, going to give our review and thoughts on Season 1. I don't know if that'll be it or there'll be more, but Season 1 of Hawkeye that just recently wrapped on Disney+. But before we do that, we have to mention the box office for Spider-Man No Way Home, because it is quite impressive. So, Donnie, what is the web slinger up to at the box office?
As of right now, $1.16 billion at the box office, which would be a good haul pre-pandemic, but in the middle of the pandemic, it is, you might say, amazing.
Yeah, that is, I'll be honest, I expected Spider-Man to do well. Given the pandemic, I don't know that 1.16 billion was on my radar for this film. I just didn't see it happening. It's impressive. I don't think this is going to be. I don't think this is a signifier of, box office and theater earnings, going back to normal. I just think this is particular to this film, given that it is celebrating, 20 years and 3 generations, if you will, of Spider-Man on film.
Yes.
I think that's more to do with it than the actual, hey, look, everything's back to normal and theaters are returning to normal. I don't think that's the case at all.
Right.
I'm hard-pressed to think of another film that's going to come close to this number in quite some time. Yeah. And no, me as a huge Batman fan, no, I am not predicting that the Batman is going to come anywhere close to this. As much as I'd like it to, I just don't think we're there yet in terms of safety at the theater and in the world. I look. I hope I'm wrong, and as a Batman and DC fan, I hope that film can pull those kind of numbers. I just don't think it will, given the situation. But then again, it's only $100 million budget, so it doesn't have to. But yeah, this is impressive. It's I think 518 million domestically, something around that number.
Think about this though too. There may be some moviegoers who are waiting for the crowds to thin out before they go. So this may have more legs.
Oh, well, it already does. Given that, again, these daily numbers are staggering.
Yes.
This may have legs
8 of them to in fact.
Yeah.
And
you know what's impressive, Donnie? I got to say, Sony is laughing right now because, I mean, they've got this movie that's made 1.16 billion. They've got Venom that without China as well, they did 500 million worldwide, right?
Right.
And they've got Ghostbusters Afterlife, which was a modest $75 million budget, and it's grossed 176 something million. So, I mean, that's 3 hits in a row for Sony.
Right.
And I mean, they're not complaining.
I'm sure not. Yeah. And they have had some missteps in the past, but they have obviously, hit a grand slam with each one of these movies.
In terms of pandemic box office, I think they're the most successful studio.
Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, Warner Brothers is in a different ballgame because they decided to do the day and date streaming for 2021 films. So, I mean, you can't compare their box office to anything because it's different when you have, here's the free option in great quality on your, available on HBO Max. Have fun. So you can't really talk about their box office in any meaningful way because it doesn't, it's a different ballgame. So Sony of the big studios, I think, is the one that's been most successful. So good on them. And they deserve it. They've put out, I haven't seen Afterlife yet, but I've heard great things, and I can't wait to see it on digital next week. And we will have a review on our Ghostbusters show, Hunting Haunts, which you can find where, Donnie?
You can find that right here on YouTube as well as iTunes and Podbean.
Yes. So, I mean, I've heard good things about that one. I've seen Venom, which was fantastic. I thought it was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. And I've seen Spider-Man No Way Home, and I absolutely loved it. So, good on them. They deserve it. They've put out some quality IP entertainment. And I hope their streak continues with Morbius and then whatever other Spider-Verse movies they have. Mm-hmm. Well, Into the Spider-Verse too. And then whatever Spider-Man adjacent films they have planned.
Yeah, so my wife tried to loan out my copy of Venom, Let There Be Carnage on Christmas Eve. And I said, wait a minute. You let me watch this movie another 10 times, then I'll loan it out, okay?
Oh, she's right to... Okay, I see.
I have not gotten like the entire effect that I want. I want, every little nook and cranny of that movie.
You should be able to have that film available to you all year round, I think. And we watch it whenever the hell you want. That's what I think.
I do want to lend it out to some people, though, so they can have the experience of the greatness that is Eddie Brock.
I think we should do, and I mean this facetiously, kind of, but I think we should do a minute-by-minute Venom podcast like some people do for some of the films. No, not gonna do that. I think that's ridiculous. Minute by minute, that's ridiculous. Anyway, that's a lot of time.
I tell you what, though, maybe on the 1-year anniversary, maybe we could do a commentary.
No, a commentary, yes, but minute by minute, scene by scene, I don't think so. But definitely a commentary is on the table. But good for the box office. I'm glad Spider-Man is doing heroic numbers, and he's sticking to the top of the box office. See, even I'm getting in on the puns now. But let's move away from Spidey for now.
Yeah, we'll have our listeners crawling up the walls. So
yeah. And let's go to Hawkeye now. Season 1, as I said, just wrapped on Disney Plus. So, Donnie, let's get. Where do you want to start? The beginning, obviously, but
yes, Hawkeye episode 1. Never meet your heroes. So it opens with we see Kate Bishop, a very young Kate Bishop, losing her dad to the attack by the Chitauri in 2012, and what. The other life-changing event that she sees is that from a distance in the very high, room that she lives in, this big, huge, palatial, whatever apartment, she sees Hawkeye fighting the Chitauri. A normal man, just, normal in the aspect that he doesn't have superpowers, but just a human who's fighting with technology and a lot of bravery. And so she is thereby inspired to the life of a superhero eventually. So I'll say this, this is comic book storytelling that we see in live action. A huge event that has ripple effects, and there spawns a plethora of stories around it. So that's been one of the touchstones, is the first Avengers movie and the attack on New York. And we have seen through Netflix and now this, that there are numerous characters who have been affected by that. So what did you think of the opening?
I love the opening. I love the way it incorporated the first Avengers movie and the different angle of a moment that we've seen, and the impact, the way they framed the shots of Hawkeye, on the rooftop and Kate looking across, and it really sort of gives you a true indication of the impact that visual experience had on Kate, and I loved it. I thought it was a great way to hook us into this world, the world of this series.
Right, I would agree. Definitely a good hook to start us out with, and gain interest in this, and also give us a little bit of a refresher on where this is starting from.
Yeah.
So we cut to the present. At age 22, Kate is a master archer. She's also very adept in the martial arts, but she lacks some judgment. And we're shown that right away when she collapses a bell tower.
Yeah.
Thinking that she's going to do something funny, and it goes far awry. It goes horribly. And again, her mom ends up, footing the bill for this. So,
well, she's rich. She can.
Yeah, well, very rich.
And I mean, as far as college pranks go, that's pretty tame compared to some real life college pranks that we've.
There have been some worse things. That's a good
right,
point.
Yeah, a bell tower. I mean, you can replace that. Yeah. Just call Tony Stark. Everybody else does, or whoever's in charge of Stark Industries.
Stark Industries now. Yeah, I guess Pepper. Call Tony. Yeah.
I mean, you could go to his gravestone and say, "Hey, Mr. Stark, can I have some money?" I mean, Peter pre No Way Home would have done that.
Peter probably does that with everybody. He's like, please have some money.
I need some help, sir.
So, one of the other things I want to point out here, there's a good use here of the Christmas backdrop. That's incorporated well. And also the color purple. And I don't mean the movie. I mean the actual color purple. That's integrated in a lot of ways, including, the mist that Hawkeye uses out of one of his arrows.
Yeah.
They, obviously, a lot of people.
If it was rain, you could have tied it into Purple Rain and had the Prince song. I mean, I would have done that, but that's just me. That would have
been cool. But I know a lot of veteran Hawkeye fans feel a little shortchanged as far as the costume goes. But with this, what they're doing with this character, with this version, they make it clear later on that he's not trying to stand out and be, a visual, standout part of the Avengers. He's living this kind of clandestine life, and he doesn't want to draw attention to himself. So of course he doesn't wear the purple mask and that part of his costume. So yeah.
And for the people that are upset at that, I don't know. There are certain costumes that work in live action. I don't know if that's one of them.
It could work, but not for the type of story they're telling with Hawkeye right now.
Right. This is a very much, and I say this knowing that we just talked about him fighting the Chitauri and a bunch of aliens, but this is a very much more grounded iteration of Hawkeye.
Right. And I mean, you look at a character like Deadpool. I mean, his costume is very eye-popping, very colorful. I think they could do it with Hawkeye too, but again, Deadpool, a very different type of story that's being told on screen.
Absolutely.
So, but again, the point that I wanted to make there is that I think this was Marvel's way of kind of sending a love letter to veteran fans. Look at all this purple. We realize that's kind of the mainstay of his costume.
Purple everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Purple everywhere. So, Hawkeye, one of the first things that I really liked, and there's plenty of Marvel humor here, is Hawkeye watching the Rogers musical. And and I'm pretty sure, the musicals that I've watched in my life, there's been a few that I've liked. A lot of them I think that same look on my face like, huh? It was a cringy musical, and it was meant to be that way. And I just really like them opening up with Hawkeye in that situation. So
Yeah, I can't say that I'm a musical fan. So, I mean, it's the idea that it's cool. Like, it is cool that if the Avengers are a real world entity in this scenario, which they are, then it makes sense that there is a musical based around you know the Avengers.
Of course.
So in that respect, I get, and I like the effect that watching the musical has on Hawkeye, because it reminds him of Natasha.
Yeah.
And that brings a lot of emotion to him, which I think is cool.
That's another key theme in this, is his relationship with Black Widow.
Yeah. So that's the benefit of that the musical served for me. The actual musical itself is probably not, if that thing actually existed, it's probably not something I'd pay to watch.
Right. Well, I believe it was called Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. I don't
Turn
know
off the light.
Is it Turn Off the Light? I thought it was Turn Off the Dark.
I mean, if it was, it's kind of a ridiculous title, because how do you turn off?
Well, anyway.
You turn off a light, you can't turn.
Well, anyway, but yeah, it's a Spider-Man musical. I have seen part of it. I saw part of it on YouTube, I believe, and yeah, I don't know that superheroes and musicals are a good match. Let's just say that.
Yeah, they're not my thing. Musicals in general are not my thing. So.
No. Yes, it is called Turn Off the Dark. So there you go.
Well, that's a stupid name.
Anyway, back to the show. I want to say something about Jeremy Renner. You know, Hawkeye is a good character. He's not one of my favorite characters in the comics. However, I will say that Jeremy Renner has gone a long way in the way he portrays Clint Barton. You know, 10 years ago, we saw this kind of brash and bold character. Now we see this guy who's a dad. He's been through the wars. He's much more contemplative and philosophical now.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of brilliant development here for a character that is grouped with so many unbelievable characters that pull your attention, like the Hulk, like Thor, like, Captain Marvel, those kinds of characters. It would be easy for Hawkeye to be kind of lost in the shuffle, but I think Jeremy Renner has done a good job at letting Hawkeye hold his own in this universe.
I would agree with that. And I would say that this series as a whole made me care about this character, whereas I really didn't before.
So we cut to Kate's mom, and we see that she's involved in something nefarious. And that's going to be another theme that runs through this whole series. What's going on behind the scenes there? Right. Now, Kate stumbles on a black market auction that includes the Ronan suit. And she makes off with it when the tracksuit mafia breaks up the event.
So, a couple of things. How many things get lost? How much Avengers memorabilia can you lose or get stolen before you start questioning your security? Because like Vulture stole a bunch of Avengers stuff, remember? Now this is ending up with a black market auction. Like, really, Avengers, the Avengers Tower or the new facility that they had really needs to invest in some higher end security.
You think somebody out there in the Marvel Cinematic Universe has a pair of Hulk's pants?
I mean, possibly. You never know. And in terms of the tracksuit mafia, you know what? I like those guys' name, and I like their choice of attire. You got to be comfortable.
Likewise, yes, exactly.
Especially after the holidays and after the holiday meals. Track pants and the tracksuits are the right way to go, in my opinion. So good on them.
Oh. So Clint sees someone on the news in the Ronan suit. Of course, that's Kate. And he goes after this person. And we see at the end of episode 1, the meeting of the Hawkeyes.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about the guys from Iowa.
That was good. And I like that way, like, instantly she was starstruck as soon as she saw him. You're Hawkeye, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, and who the hell are you?
Yeah. Well, we saw like a myriad of references that people recognize his face in this universe. So,
right.
You know, he's not an unknown entity. People are very familiar with the Avengers. So.
Right.
All right. So we're going to just rate this as a whole. Am I
right? Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah.
All right. Let's go on to episode 2, Hide and Seek. We see Clint and Kate go back to her apartment. He just wants the suit back, but she hasn't been careful. And the tracksuit mafia, they have followed her. Despite the fact that she's convinced that they didn't, they're like, oh, hey, Kate Bishop. And the next thing you know, Molotov cocktail. So after the attack, Kate and Clint go back to her aunt's apartment. And we see that a firefighter named Grills, who is a LARPer being a live action role player, has taken the suit from the scene of the fire. And eventually we get Clint, and I this was one of my favorite scenes. He ends up going to a live action role play event. And you can tell that this is the last place on earth he wants to be. And it made me wonder. I was like, is this how like normal people look at people like us when we're at Comic-Cons and they're just like, you know, if you're somebody who's not interested in comics and you stumble on a Comic-Con, is that how you look at people? You know, like, you know.
Well, cosplay is one thing. These guys are doing a whole like production kind of thing.
They were committed. They were deeply committed.
Like they're fighting. I mean, cosplay is, sure, they walk around Comic-Con, they take, they take photos, they do photo shoots. That's one level. I think the whole I'd be if I'm walking in the middle of the street in New York or otherwise, and I see people role playing medieval kind of warfare. I'm like, God. Even I'd be like, what the? I thought, isn't there a designated location for this kind of thing?
Right. Well, I thought they looked like a fun group. Clint, I think, had a little fun, maybe not a lot, but
yeah, he wouldn't admit it, but you could tell had some fun.
So what the story is there is that Grills agrees to give him back the suit if he lets Clint, quote unquote, kill him, being Grills, kill Clint in front of everybody so he would look good in front of the other LARPers, that's what happens. And so at the same time, we see that Kate is suspect of her mom's fiance, Jack. Speaking of swords, we see that Jack is a skilled swordsman. And so you're kind of led to believe early on that maybe this is the guy behind some of these, nefarious things that are going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Clint lets himself get taken by the tracksuit mafia to see who is behind them. He calls it a catch and release. He's like, I'm going to let them take me, calls his wife and says, I'll be careful. I'll make sure that I get away, but I want to see who's behind all this.
Right.
Then Kate bungles the plan and they're both captured.
I like the idea of, and I guess this kind of makes sense when you're married and have a kid and you're also, a vigilante / superhero, that you're checking in with your wife to say, look, this is the plan. Everything will be okay, but this is what I got. It's like calling in from work saying, yeah, I'm going to be late tonight, or it's like it's like the everyday equivalent of that. And I found that very, very, very. I'm like, it was humorous, but I'm like, I could buy it. Like, it makes logical sense.
Now, on the other end of that, you have to suspend disbelief a little bit because we saw Kate. She takes a beating in episode 1. Even though she dishes some back. Then she falls through a skylight in episode 2. Now, you have those two things happen in short order. You're not going to be running around fighting people. You're going to need a couple of weeks off. But again, we're not totally grounded in realism here.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Now, at the end of this, as Clint and Kate are captured, we're introduced to the character named Echo, whose actual name in the Marvel Universe, this is Maya Lopez.
Yes.
And she is an indigenous American actress played by an actress named Alaqua Cox. I think that's how you say her name. She is deaf and an amputee.
Indeed.
And I was highly impressed by her in this.
As was I. And I'm a fan of the character because it's a Daredevil adjacent kind of character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I knew who she was because I read about her in the comics. And I love the fact that Marvel went out and got an actress that is both, deaf and an amputee. I like that it's there's a realism to it and a representation that I think is important.
Exactly. And I would totally agree with you there. And, this was somebody very skilled at what they were doing.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so this didn't look like somebody that, they just have this person there parading this person around. She fit very well into the story, and I definitely.
And I'm sure there were certain stunts that a stunt person did, but
of course.
But I'd also venture to say that she did a lot of it herself, what she could, within the safety parameters of, hey, we can't put our actors in extreme danger, but in terms of, I'm sure that she did a fair bit of her own fighting and stunts to a degree. So good on her. And I'm looking forward to more of the character for sure.
Yes. So episode 3, entitled Echoes, we see Maya's backstory. When she was young, she obviously had to learn how to adapt as a person who is hearing impaired, and also, again, an amputee. And we see that from an early age, she became very proficient in the martial arts. And we also see a glimpse of her father, the very big hand, somebody in a suit.
Oh, her uncle.
Oh, right. Okay. Right.
The father.
Right. Exactly. Excuse me. But we saw somebody very important there that, again, if you're a fan of either the Netflix films or you're a fan of the comics, you had an idea who this might be.
Especially when he chuckles and you recognize the voice. Like, there were people that like, well, I mean, that's cool, but I don't know if okay, we're just going to spoil it because if you're watching this, you've seen the show.
Right.
There had been rumors, strong rumors that Kingpin was going to feature and that it would once again be played by Vincent D'onofrio.
Right.
And the minute he touched the kid who was playing Echo's cheek and chuckled, I'm like, that's Vincent D'onofrio's voice. I could even hear it through the chuckle. And then I went on YouTube and watched videos. Well, I'm curious to see if it's gonna be Vincent D'onofrio. Did you not recognize the chuckle? Am I the only one? Again, I don't do minute by minute podcasts, and so I'm not that but I could recognize Vincent D'onofrio.
And I want to say, and I don't want to get sidetracked too much here, Vincent D'onofrio, I think, belongs in the upper echelon of comic book villains as far as his portrayal of Wilson Fisk.
Oh, 100%. He's right up there with, to me.
I would put him up there with, Alfred Molina and Heath Ledger and Michael B. Jordan, some of the greats. So
Jack Nicholson, the whole night.
Yes. So we also see an awesome cameo from KB Toys, and I really miss KB Toys. So
everybody's getting excited about Vincent D'onofrio. Donnie's getting excited about KB Toys.
That's right. I miss. There used to be a.
How many collectibles did you buy from there, Donnie?
I bought a lot. I remember the like 10-inch Marvel figures that came out. If you remember, like in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And I had quite a few of those because they were. I mean, the aisles were bleeding with Marvel figures back then, and so a lot of them were marked down. And so I bought a lot of them. But I digress. This is not a collectibles podcast. So anyway. So Clint and Kate eventually escape from the tracksuit mafia. And we see a really interesting visual here. Clint loses his hearing aid. And for me, this is one of the most interesting aspects of this series.
Yeah.
As someone who, if you probably can tell by the gray in the beard, someone who is aging, who is, well into middle age, you realize that you get to a certain age, and no matter how much you try to do as far as exercise and diet and those kind of things, nobody gets all scot-free. Everybody's going to have some aches and pains. Everybody's going to have something to deal with. And in Clint's case, because he's led such an extraordinary life, he has some hearing loss. And it's interesting.
He's been in too many Michael Bay movies.
Right. Exactly. So it's interesting to see how someone of someone of unusual abilities compensates when they're put in these perilous situations. I just thought that was really interesting.
Absolutely. I like the angle too, because again, it shows that this is a real person who doesn't have superpowers, who isn't afforded, the benefit of being a god like Thor, or having an iron suit that can repair most of his or hide most of his deficiencies, like Iron Man,
right?
Or Captain America, the super soldier serum. That this kind of lifestyle is going to take effect.
Yes.
It's why characters like also Spider-Man, even though he's got enhanced things, and Daredevil, even again enhanced, but you still see the after effects. But then on the DC side, it's why when you see Batman all scarred and banged up, it's like, yeah, well, you're a real human being running around doing that kind of stuff. It's going to take a toll in some facet, and
right.
For one of Clint's issues because of what he does is the hearing.
Right. And it was just really interesting to see him deal with this. So
yeah, but also it gave him a good opportunity to relate to Echo and kind of appeal to her on her level,
right?
Which I thought was very important. Mm-hmm. And also, it allowed for some humorous exchange where he could tune out Kate when he wanted to, because he didn't have the hearing aid in. And I thought that was hilarious. I would never tune out Haley Steinfeld, by the way. So that would never be an issue with me. And I've got to do it, Donnie. This will be releasing in the new year, so technically this is the first one of depending on what releases, but this might be the first time in the new year. In case anybody forgot or hasn't been following my Twitter thread, Haley Steinfeld, and Nico, this is for you, on the list.
So in trademark Marvel style, Hawkeye's getaway is extremely colorful, including him going through a ball pit. And when he emerged, I know I can't be the only person who shouted "Bazinga!"
Oh, I did too. Yeah.
I could not help myself. So after that, we see a myriad of trick arrows used during the car chase.
Oh, that was brilliant.
That was an amazing action. I can't possibly do justice trying to describe everything that we saw. That's the kind of scene you could go back and watch over and over and never.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love the shock on Kate's, like the shock reaction by Kate as to how many trick arrows there are.
Yeah. They did extremely well by adapting that to this series. So
I think the greatest shot of that sequence, though, for me, was the one where they both jump off the bridge, and like it's a little slow-mo.
Yeah.
And then they use the arrow to like as a grappling hook.
Yeah.
To get underneath the bridge to the subway. That was just
that really was cool. So we get a touching moment back at the apartment. Again, we talked about Hawkeye's hearing loss. He gets his hearing aid smashed in the battle. So when his son calls him, he can't really hear his son very well. And they did a great job, by the way, like trying to replicate that and show us like what that would sound like. And so you hear, this from Hawkeye's perspective. And of course, he's desperate to hear his son, as any parent would be.
Right.
And we see Kate help him compensate for this by writing what the kid is saying on a pad, and he reads it. And I really thought that was a great character bonding moment. That really
I think
your heartstrings.
Yeah, it was both heartbreaking and heartwarming in the sense heartbreaking because he couldn't hear his son, but heartwarming that Kate was stepped up and was able to be the conduit between him and his son. And like you said, really strange. I think from then on, Kate and Clint became partners in the truest sense of the word.
Yeah. Even though at one point Clint denies that they're partners.
They're always. But again, he's doing that to keep her safe more than.
Well, and we see later on in a diner, there is a discussion between Kate and Hawkeye about basically the nature of heroism.
Yeah.
And Hawkeye, who is still, I think, very proud of what he's done, and still a lot of the old Hawkeye exists within him.
Yeah.
The need to do the right thing. He's also paid a price, and not just physically.
Absolutely.
And so he looks at her and he's like, you're going to lose things along the way. And she's very anxious to get at it. She wants to, get into the superhero business. She wants to be his partner. And he's like, you're going to pay a price. And you don't understand that now, but you will.
Okay. Yeah. No, definitely. That was a good conversation.
So, anything else you want to mention about that episode?
No, I think we touched on all the big moments. Yeah.
Episode 4, entitled Partners, am I right?
Indeed. At
this point, the show's been pretty elusive about Jack's agenda. Something seems fishy, especially when you're looking at someone who likes to use swords. Hey,
now Zorro's a swordsman. Don't be knocking swordsmen. Well, come on, don't paint them with the same brush.
Sure, no, but in a modern context, and especially in the Marvel thing,
somebody who 2021, if you're using a sword, it's like
it's unusual at least.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. So we get a little misdirection here, and I really like that they kind of led you to believe, the writers here, that Jack might be behind some of these things that are going on behind the scene. It actually reminded me a little bit of what Jeff Thorne has been doing in Green Lantern.
There it is, first Green Lantern of the year.
You think that I think about Green Lantern with everything I watch and read, and
yes, I do.
Yes,
I do.
So, by the way, if you want to know more about Green Lantern, you can watch or listen to the Emerald Echo podcast, available on iTunes and Podbean, and also right here on YouTube. That's the Emerald Echo podcast with Adam and myself.
Absolutely.
So, but we see that Jack is good at dancing and wooing the ladies. He's also wooing the ladies. Excuse me. He's bad at aphorisms.
So he's a swordsman version of Ric Flair. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Well, let's hope he doesn't do some of the things.
Yeah.
Let's not go there. Anyway, this definitely wouldn't be YouTube appropriate if we talked about all that.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah. So Eleanor is worried about Kate working with Hawkeye. You see that here. And one of the things that kind of immediately got my attention is she used the phrase Avengers level threat, which kind of, I was just like, okay, well, I think she's on to maybe more here than just, kind of the socialite life. I think, something deep is going on.
Yeah, like how does she know what an Avengers level threat looks like?
Yeah, that kind of, dialogue made me think, what's going on here with her? So, in the meantime, after Kate shows up at her aunt's apartment with Pizza Dog and pizza, by the way.
I gotta just say quickly, I'm not a dog person.
The dog was adorable.
In fact, some of them scare the living crap out of me, depending on the kind of dog. But even I thought this one was adorable. Yeah. There are two dogs that I gravitate towards in the comic book space, and that is this one here, Pizza Dog, he's called, and Haley, aka Bitewing, in the Nightwing comics,
right?
Which we have to get back to, by the way. But that's
we will. Plenty of time, my man. Plenty of time.
Oh, of course, the whole year.
So even though they're enjoying some holiday cheer, the talk gets dark when Kate asks Clint about his Ronan time.
Yeah.
And it's really tough for Clint to discuss this part of his past, obviously. It was a traumatizing time for him. And he said, my job has always been to hurt people. And he was like, I was a weapon. And that past is not completely behind him. He sees it. He's like, I'm tied to it. She thinks, yeah, that's behind you. That's all in the past. And he's like, no, it still lives with me.
Right.
So, again, I like the fact that Clint here, he's older and he's much more introspective than the Hawkeye we saw in 2012.
And again, I think this speaks to the idea that, there's an idea that, by some detractors, Marvel is all fluff and popcorn and there's no stakes, no consequences. And this series, through Hawkeye's in Kate's various discussions is proving otherwise.
Yes. Speaking of consequences, for instance, we see that Echo is after Clint because Clint, as Ronan, killed her father.
Right.
And Echo later attacks Kate, and Clint is attacked by a mysterious assailant at the same time, and that turns out to be Yelena Belova, the other Black Widow.
And you talking about now the rooftop sequence?
Yes, yes.
And the apartment sequence? Oh, man, that was another great action fight sequence.
Oh, yes, yes.
Phenomenal.
Yes. And by the way, a lot of hilarious exchanges between Kate and Yelena.
Yeah, by the way, I mean, she's in the next 2 episodes, so I'll save it.
Okay.
But yeah, you know where it's going. Hold on, we'll just wait. Okay. But yeah, no, the action was fantastic. I mean,
yeah, it's a good thing there's an omniverse now instead of just a multiverse, because there's so much.
Thank you. Thanks to Nico's enjoyment of it. I finally put the Twitter thread together. And it's coming together. I'm able to keep a little bit better track of it now, Donnie. It's very good. It's becoming a little bit more manageable.
Exactly. I can see you at home now. You're keeping track of all the Earths and all the wives that you're.
Oh yeah, I got a list. I got a board. I got a whiteboard.
Yeah. So we see that Yelena, this is tied to Black Widow's sacrifice.
Yeah.
And we get more information on that later on. So.
Right.
Episode 5, Ronan. And we see a Black Widow flashback to 2018. Black Widow being Yelena. And she breaks into the house of a former Black Widow named Anna. And she hits her with the antidote, but she's not under mind control. She's just killing people for money because she's good at it. And she can. So that was an interesting scene.
Yeah. And also, we see the effects of the snap back then.
I was just getting to that. Yelena goes into the bathroom and she goes through the blip. And when she comes back out, Anna is a mom. And the whole house has changed. And you realize, again, 5 years later, imagine the shock. You go into a room, you come out, it's 5 years
later. Imagine going to the washroom and the next thing you know, wait a minute, what? 5 years passed.
Exactly.
It's like me watching the Leafs in Game 7. I go to the bathroom and it's 4-1 Leafs. I come out of there, it's 5-4 Boston. What the heck? Wait a minute, I just went.
You're like, I stepped through a wormhole.
I'm going right back to the washroom. Enough of this garbage.
Exactly. So,
anyway,
we see that Kate is upset because Clint refused their partnership out of concern for her. Yeah. He's really worried that again, 22-year-old young woman, he's worried about her safety. Yeah. Obviously, she doesn't always make the best decisions either.
Right, of course. Yeah.
So Kate returns to her old apartment, and we see that Yelena is waiting for her there. And again, they have a lot of chemistry on film, these two. And one of the things I like was Yelena was like, "You only have one fork?" And Kate's like, "I only need one fork. I'm just one person." And
on Earth. Crap, I can't remember what on Earth 18, either 18 or 19, she needs 2 forks. Anyway, I digress. The whole discussion about who knew that a discussion about Kraft macaroni and whether to put hot sauce on it or not could be so entertaining.
That's a woman after my own heart right there. Yeah, a bunch of hot sauce.
Speaking of, and now that you said,
go ahead.
Florence Pugh, that's how you pronounce it?
Yes, I believe so. Yes,
is definitely on the list. By the way, did you know that she played WWE superstar Paige in Fighting with My Family?
Oh, really? She did? Okay. Yeah. That's something I still need to see, but I'm definitely interested in that. This is a weird observation. I really like the hairstyle she had with like the little like French braid thing in the middle of her head.
I just thought that was
Florence. Yeah, That was very unusual. There was one point she had this like.
I'm like, wait a minute, is he talking about Florence or Paige or where we going?
No, she actually had it here in Hawkeye. It was
okay.
it looked different. I thought, oh well, that's a cool hairstyle for this series. Anyway, also want to say when it made me think back to my bachelor.
I never pegged you as somebody who would fixate on hairstyles. I don't know why.
It's not exactly hard these days, so you know. But yeah, it made me think about my old bachelor days when again. I was living in a small apartment by myself, and I only ever had I'd use a plate and I'd wash it, and that would be it. And people would say, "How come you don't use your other plates and your other cutlery?" And I'm like, "I only have one mouth."
You're like, "What other cutlery? What other plates?"
Exactly. I'm like, I'll leave the stuff up there, and in the.
Why would I buy plates when I can buy more comic books? Like, don't you guys have any priorities?
Exactly. That's a good point. So, however, we learn that Yelena is there to kill Clint. She tells Kate this. And her perspective is that Clint was negligent and responsible for Natasha's death. And we see this kind of difference in perspective in a lot of superhero stories. Like Age of Ultron, you saw that the Avengers were not well received everywhere in the world. Some people thought, the Avengers are dangerous. In fact, we talked about it on a recent podcast about, Eddie Brock as the Lethal Protector. Early on, Eddie was a villain. He went straight, but a lot of people are just like, no, we're not buying that. We're still coming after you, like the jury. So I like this idea that people can see these big events from different perspectives.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So.
Yeah, not everybody's going to be uniformly behind the idea of, hey, the Avengers or Hawkeye are the most fantastic person in the world, right? And so, yeah.
So, being that the two Hawkeyes at this point have split up, Clint crashes at Grill's place, and he sends a message to the tracksuits as Ronan, and he asks Maya to come meet him in a place where they first met. Now he knows this is a trap. Okay, obviously he's always a couple of steps ahead. And he quickly takes care of everyone who comes as her backup, including Kazi, and he faces off with her. And she does manage to get the upper hand a few times, but eventually Clint overcomes her. Again, he is a master fighter with just about every type of weapon. So he pulls off the hood, interestingly enough, to reveal himself to Maya, and he tries to explain that the two of them are the same. And then at the end of this episode, we get the reveal of the big bad, which is the Kingpin, played by Vincent D'onofrio.
Yeah, that was... I appreciated the reveal that Kate's mother was nefarious, because I called it the first time I saw her. I'm like, nah, this woman doesn't sit right with me.
Good. Yeah.
And then seeing Kingpin, even though it was through a phone image. As a Daredevil fan, I love the Netflix. In my opinion, one of the best live-action Marvel adaptations. When I saw him, I'm like, yes, I'm winning, and I became Charlie Sheen without the STDs. But between that and certain Spider-Man spoilers, which is it fair?
I think we need to wait a little bit longer on that. Okay.
There's certain things that happen in Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And then I was just, yes, everything is coming up roses here.
Yeah.
In terms of my Marvel likes. So I thought it was great, and I'm like, all right,
Kingpin is a character that I never get enough of him in the comics. He is one of the greatest characters, one of the greatest villains.
Donnie has actually taken on a Kingpin style role now in the podcast network. He's doing a lot of behind the scenes shenanigans, editing and such, but I call them behind the scenes shenanigans to make it seem more cool. So he's the Kingpin to my, I can't say the Kingpin to my Daredevil because that doesn't make sense because
right?
they get odds with each other. But you get where I'm going, you know.
Right. So
he's like the Steve Ditko to my Stanley. I don't know.
oh, there you go. That works. But yeah, like I said, I
he's
like
think the Jarvis to my. No, that's too close.
Okay. I'm like the synergy to your gem. How about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't expect that one, did you?
No.
So I just want to say though again, Vincent D'onofrio looks like the Kingpin just walked off the page
Absolutely, 100%.
of the comic.
Yeah.
He's a giant, but he looks like he's somebody who is big and thick and in shape and looks like he could deal out a lot of punishment if he wanted to. And we'll
I'd be scared to run into him.
Yeah, he's a big dude, man. So the opening scene is a conversation between Wilson Fisk and Eleanor Bishop, and we see that Eleanor killed Armand III and hired Yelena to kill Clint.
Yeah.
So so she definitely up to some shenanigans.
I like that word.
Yeah. And we see that she's actually been working for Kingpin ever since Kate's dad died and left them saddled with a lot of debt. And she's paid that off with a lot of interest on top of that.
Right.
So no surprise there that the Kingpin would, be very manipulative. But now Elena wants Kate out of danger. And she's like, I'm giving up this life.
Yeah.
Which is not going to sit well with the Kingpin.
Well, of course not. Yeah.
Right.
And I got to say, the voice that Vincent D'onofrio puts on, man, it's perfect.
Right.
Yeah, everything about his performance is just.
Oh, I love that when he leaned into Kazi and he was like, "People need to be reminded that the city belongs to me."
I don't want to say, where does she think she works at? Goldman and Sachs.
He said she just wants to resign, like she works at Goldman and Sachs or something like that. Oh, it's funny. So, on the opposite side of things, Clint finally confirms that Kate is his partner. He refers to her as such. Yeah. They're in it till the end.
Because she had said, this is my issue. You go home and be with your family. And he's like, no, we're partners.
We're partners. And that was a touching moment. I thought
absolutely,
that was very cool for this point in the story. So they come up with just a plethora of trick arrows. And that was a perfect way to kind of slow the story down a little bit, but at the same time be very enticing. The big battle is coming. Yeah. But here's kind of a cool prelude.
Yeah, showing the preparation, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Batman suit-up moments in the movies,
It reminded me of Batman Begins.
I get so excited by those Batman suit-up moments. And then I saw the butt shot and I'm like, all right, I lost my excitement here. In Batman and Robin, I was like, really? Do we need those? Carry on.
So later on, we see Kingpin and Kazi and the tracksuits attack Eleanor's party. And Clint and Kate and the LARPers are all there. Yelena is also around, and of course, she's after Clint. And we see a hilarious elevator fight between Yelena and Kate.
Again, the chemistry between these two is so good. Donnie, I think I need a show with just the two of them.
I'd be down for a show with those two. They work very well together. They have a lot of chemistry on screen.
Or put them in a movie together. I don't care, but give me more of them together.
So this is an action-heavy episode, as you would expect for the final episode. Jack, who, initially we're kind of led to believe that he's on the wrong side of things, he shows up and uses those sword skills to fight the tracksuit mafia.
Yeah, he was good.
And
it did look weird in the middle of modern-day New York.
Speaking of, one of my favorite moments was when Clint took Kazi to Suplex City, baby.
Well, that was a great move, yeah. I love the way it was done. And, it was great.
It actually looks realistic.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're strong enough and agile enough, you could do that to somebody.
And if you got somebody in that position, that's one of the options that you have.
Yeah. So then we see that eventually the big battle is Clint and Kate on the ice in the middle of New York, doing the dynamic duo and taking on the entire tracksuit mafia, just the two of them, and taking them down with the trick arrows. And that was some amazing visuals.
Yeah, the amount of trick arrows was just insane that they pulled off in this thing.
Yeah.
And I like the one that could freeze people's legs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah. You better hope that Reverse Flash doesn't get a hold of one of those.
I was actually waiting for like a cold pun because I'm so scarred from Batman and Robin. I'm like, all right, somebody's going to say something to do with freezing or cold, but thankfully it didn't happen.
So numerous other one-on-one fights take place, including the Kingpin versus Kate, which was actually my favorite fight. Her doing everything she could against this like nearly supernaturally strong guy.
Because it showed how powerful he is. Like,
and that's the way he is in the comics too. By the way, he stands up to on a regular basis superpowered individuals because he's that strong.
He doesn't care.
Yeah. And so we see that. We also see the final conflict with Maya and Kazi, and she's forced to kill him because he won't basically, go away with her. He won't, she wants out. She realizes what's going on. He's on the wrong side. He's like, this is my life. And they end up fighting and she has to kill him.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, Yelena shows up and she tries to kill Clint. And it seems like she's on the verge of it.
Yeah.
And, he's kind of crawling away from her on the ice. And that's when we see him say, "Save Martha!" And she's like, "Understand her name." So, that's exactly where my mind went with that.
I was trying to figure out this whole episode what the Martha one was. And as you were teeing it up, I'm like, there it is. Here it is. I know where he's going.
I was totally thinking about it. And that's a really emotional scene, too, because he's trying to convince her, yeah, I would have given my life in place of your sister in a heartbeat.
And I like how he gets her to calm down, the humming or the whistling.
The whistle. And we heard that earlier on in the series.
Yeah.
And so they reminded us just how important that was.
Yeah.
And so, again, peace is made there, but that was a very, touching scene. And all I could think about was, why did you say that name?
I like that emotional connection that Yelena and Clint make, because I think it's important that Natasha was family to both of them, in a sense. So
very much so. Yeah,
these two people shouldn't be at odds for much longer.
Yeah. So Kate and Clint head back to the farm that we saw in Avengers: Age of Ultron for Christmas, and things end up well for them there. So, and the Barton family, of course, they welcome her in for Christmas. So this actually made me want it to be the Christmas season all over again, even though we're past that. I was like,
You know what's good though? By the way, there was an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. tease.
Oh, right. Yeah. Go ahead and explain that with the watch.
The watch of the watch that was retrieved was the watch of Clint's wife, and it had the logo, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. logo.
The S.H.I.E.L.D. logo, yes.
So are they saying that she was once Mockingbird? Is that what
that's what it seems to be, that she was in some way involved as, Mockingbird or part of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that.
Could we see her, have a more substantial, role going forward?
It's possible.
That'd be interesting because, by the way, she was also Velma in Scooby-Doo, wasn't she?
Oh, right.
And by the way, I'll throw it out there right now. Why the hell not? Linda Cardellini is her name?
I don't remember what her name is.
Yeah, also on the list.
Oh.
New Year, 3 times already.
That's right.
Take a drink every time I click the pen. You guys be drunk by moment one.
I'd have to go to the bathroom right away. So just, closing thoughts here. I like the realism of Hawkeye here. It's, it's a very rich character who still wants to do the right thing, still has the skills, but he's also older and battered and he just wants to be a dad. So I like this kind of inner conflict that they played with all the way through this series.
I absolutely love this show. I think it made me it made me care about Hawkeye on a level that I didn't care about him before. It made me fall in love with Kate Bishop as a character, but also, aside from being one of my multiverse wives, Haley Steinfeld is immensely talented performer. And again, a stand-up performance by her, but also by Florence Pugh, who reprised as Yelena. It brought back one of my favorites in Vincent D'onofrio. Despite the last scene, I don't think it's the last time we've seen Kingpin.
Yeah, well, what it made me think of was that recent series that we reviewed with Spider-Man, where he had part of his face shot off, but he survived.
Yeah, so I could see it happening, and I definitely, with Echo getting a spin-off series, I definitely think we're going to see more of Kingpin.
Yeah,
and we may see a certain lawyer pop up as
Oh yeah, well, could be. But I'm down for any time Vincent D'onofrio wants to come back as Kingpin. I'm down. I'm there.
He seems keen. So
that's right.
And also, I liked I think this had a perfect balance of realism and comic bookiness, if that's not even a word, but you know what I mean. And it had that little bit of that Die Hard 1 flavor. So, this is going to be a series that I replay every year during the Christmas season.
That's a good point. Definitely a lot of Christmas infused into the story. So
this is not a Christmas watch every year.
There you go.
I'll say it right now. This may be my favorite Disney Plus Marvel series so far.
Okay.
For me.
Yeah. All right. So what would you rate it then, sir?
Are we doing letter?
Yeah, let's just do a letter grade.
I'm going to say solid A. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say a B, only because I felt like there were certain parts of it that were a little predictable, because we've seen this template before of the old hero either past his or her prime, or they're retired and they're coming back to help the younger hero, like, Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse. But there was enough done here with Hawkeye being developed. Jeremy Renner, again, a great actor, and establishing Kate Bishop as somebody who may be very important to the MCU going forward. They did enough with this to make it a very entertaining experience for me. So
yeah, definitely. So that's it. That's our take on Hawkeye. We hope you enjoyed our review and our thoughts. We enjoyed bringing this episode to you. And while we wait for, the next Disney Plus Marvel series, I'm not sure what exactly is going to be next. But
isn't it She-Hulk? Because I'm excited for that one.
Could be She-Hulk, could be Moon Knight. I'm not sure. But whatever it is, we'll, of course, be covering it. And until then, you can talk about all the Marvel Disney Plus series with us so far on social media. Donnie, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter as The Emerald Enthusiast. Let's talk collectibles. Let's talk comics. Let's talk Marvel. Let's talk Green Lantern.
You can find me on Twitter at Adam_LeafsFan. We also have a Twitter page for the podcast network, which is at MMNPDC. We have a Facebook page, which should be somewhere in the link below. Click it. I will add you, and we can continue the conversation there. Remember to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That really helps a lot. And
check out my YouTube channel as well. That's the
of course, yeah. You gotta plug that. That's a good channel.
With a plethora,
got him this job, folks. So check it out. I don't know if he's regretting that now, but he got it anyway. But yeah, we had a lot of fun. Lots more Marvel talk to come, definitely, and of course, everything else, every other geek-related franchise or IP that we cover here will be discussed in the year and years to come.
Right.
But until next time and next episode, remember that Hawkeye is forever. From the first trick arrow to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everybody.